This is the Unstarving Musicians Podcast. The podcast features conversation for musicians of all types and genres, a curation of expertise intended to help all musicians be better at marketing, business, the creative process, and all the other things that empower us to do more of what we love, make music. Greetings and Happy New Year, my unstarving musician friends and family. Welcome to another episode. A little over 8 months ago, I recorded my very first interview for this podcast, and it started off problematic. I encountered technical issues, but bit the bullet and forged on with the interview. I knew that my window of opportunity for this particular conversation was a little bit small. My guest on that day was Rex Brown, best known as bass player for Pantera and Then Down. When we spoke, Rex was about to launch his first solo album, Smoke on This. He came on the podcast because we're old friends and bandmates going back to our high school days, and I think we both saw it as a nice opportunity to just catch up. Plus, he was in a great place. The album was already looking and sounding like it was going to be a big success. When we finished our conversation, I listened to the playback and my heart sank. The audio was not good. It was important for me to start this podcast with high-quality content, which of course includes high-quality audio. I sat on the recording for a while before admitting to Rex that I decided not to use it. He sounded disappointed, I think because he actually enjoyed the conversation. But he said he'd be willing to do it again sometime. The question in my mind was when. The launch of Smoke on This had just begun, and Rex was understandably going to be very busy for quite some time. I didn't pursue another date out of respect for his time, but I recently went back to the recording, ran it by my editor for some feedback, and decided to tell Rex that I wanted to publish it after all. He kindly agreed to let me do so. So, the audio is not great. I also had to laugh listening to how painfully green I was at interviewing and nervous because I'd experienced technical issues before we started recording. And just as my old high school friend would have done, Rex gave me a hard time for not being more prepared. He hasn't changed. But I'm sure I had it coming. We gave each other all kinds of crap as kids. Rex is a lovely guy and a good friend. I couldn't be more excited for him about his new album, which you can check out at rexbrown.net. And you should check out. It's killer. In spite of the train wreckish technical issues and the rough edges on my part, Rex comes across as very genuine in our conversation. We cover a lot of ground, and I'm excited to make this episode the first of the new year. Yes, Happy New Year. Rex, I'm grateful to be your friend, and to you, my listeners, thank you for being here. Please enjoy my conversation with Rex Brown. Oh, and another thing, I almost forgot. I was such a wreck when we did the interview because of all the issues I was having and Rex giving me a hard time. I didn't really start the conversation off. It just sort of sounds like someone drops the needle in on us. But anyway, let me start it off by saying, Rex, welcome to the Unstarving Musicians Podcast.
I did listen to the album. I really like it. It's got some great texture. When I listened to that first two tracks, I had to take a break from it because I was trying to get it over my Sonos system and finally got that worked out. But I heard the first couple of tracks and they were pretty heavy, which I liked. And then I was very pleased to hear the different kind of sounds that you do. So it's very cool. Very, very cool. So about we were just talking about with regards to all the news outlets getting hold of it and how crazy it feels. Is that different than past projects you've done? And if so, how?
Maybe it's just that it's reaching a different level. Number one, they haven't heard me sing before. They haven't heard me play guitar. They hadn't heard me take that front row position. And this thing started out as just a fun project of writing a couple of songs, and it became a monster as we started doing them. For me, it's all about finding the voice and trying to make that, how's that going to fit in with the songs that we're writing? And once we hit that, really we hit gold. But I wanted a diverse record. I wanted something that was against, Rob, I get tired of being kind of pigeonholed as just that bass player from Pantera when I can do all kinds of things. I'm a well-rounded musician. So as an artist, it gave me that freedom to just do what I wanted to do. Look, I funded the thing myself. And along the way, I just kept giving it to some buddies of mine and started to create a little buzz in the industry and picked up one of the biggest solo record deals that have come around the last 10 years. It's insane, man. It just the way that it kind of works. It's a hit or miss in this business. 1 in a million, it's all about timing.
When you mentioned finding your voice or finding the voice, are you talking about kind of the voice of the band or the record, or were you talking a little bit about your own vocal?
Well, both. I think what I was talking about was more about my vocal, but once you have that, say, I think the song that started this thing all was a song called Fault Line that was I had a songwriter partner in this, Lance Harville, that had a couple of these songs, and then we just started molding these songs into how my voice is going to portray. So when we went for that first song with Fault Line, I had to find the sound that I was kind of looking for. And my voice, I can make it sound anywhere from Gene Simmons, from the old Kiss stuff, to Tom Waits, to I could even get sharp as a tack with Tom Petty. So it's finding that diversity and then crossing the line and, okay, this is how the chorus is going to, this is how the pre-chorus is going to go. And that helped define the voice of the record and the voice of myself singing.
It's funny you mentioned Gene Simmons because I don't know if it was like in the first couple of tracks, and it was definitely like the first time.
It is. It sounds like Gene Simmons was a Texas drawl.
Yeah. Well, it's funny. I mentioned to Sammy, my wife, for those who are listening, I said he kind of sounds a little bit like Gene Simmons. I forgot what else I said, but anyway, I could hear the influence, which I thought was really cool. I think I said something to the effect of, he sounds like a polished version of Gene Simmons. But you sound great throughout.
Yeah,
throughout the record.
They put out those solo records, and I think that's the one I listen to most. But those guys were my heroes when I was 10 years old in front of a mirror, putting the grease paint on and all that kind of stuff. And then your musical palette, definitely, when you're 10 years old. At the same time, I'm listening to ZZ Top. And then shortly after that, I met you fellows. And then the musical palette went from there to Stones and Zeppelin and everything else. So what I tried to do with this record is drag all those influences and put them into one. And that just comes down to, and I've listened to a lot of records in my day. You name it. I listened to from Sinatra to Slayer. The palette's wide and everything in between.
With regards to your guitar playing now, I've known you for a long, long time, and you always played guitar. In fact, I have a great picture of you when we were really young, and you had an acoustic guitar in your hand. It's sort of like ingrained in my head. You were always good at it. Did you have to spend time leading up to this to improve your chops, or did you feel good going into it?
I did, because you remember, I was on the road for 20-odd years as a bass player. So I told myself in about 2014, I said, look, I need to take off a couple of years. I'm getting really burnt from this same old. And so I went to see my kids grow there at 13, 14. That was the perfect years for me. So I went back to my house in Texas, and I sat with my Telecaster into this old 68 twin reverb that I had, and didn't put any effects on it. I didn't plug it through any book, and learned how to play guitar again. And from there, it just started growing. Here comes the pedal geek phase. And as we're going along writing these songs, the bass just comes. Anytime I pick it up, it's just second nature. I think I overdubbed maybe 2 or 3 parts in this whole record, and this started 15 months ago. So recut the drums to the bass track and a scratch guitar 4 different ways. So, the bass is just something, when I pick it up, it's just a natural feel. I've been doing it so long, I don't even have to think about it. I try to get myself in the headspace of where it just comes out. Now, with the guitar, it's a totally different story. The chordings and phrasings and everything else, and how my guitar playing as a rhythm guitar player is going to fit with the other guitar player that's playing the main chunk. It was a finely tuned, very well thought out process of what we did.
Do you currently have a home studio, Rex?
Do I currently have a studio?
At home?
I got a little makeshift, like everybody, DAW. I never use it. I put riffs into, I probably have 80 songs inside of my phone. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
It's one of those things, when I need a riff, I just go back and I remember that one. Let's go back and let's go to the riff tape. And it's kind of like my holy grail. I need a lick in between this and that, or I can go back, and there's a lot of stuff where I'll record for, like, if I'm sitting, just depending on, I spend a lot of time here in my house in Albuquerque. When I go to Texas, I spend a lot of time fiddling around with, fretless bass. And the challenge is, man, I'm still looking, there's only 12 notes and I'm looking for that 13th. Being a musician for as long as I've been doing it, since Robert, we were in high school, that at a certain point, I'm one of those guys that's going to be forever looking for another way of trying to express it.
Sure. How do you capture your ideas now? You just very for a second mentioned a piece of gear that you use, but how are you capturing stuff and archiving it in your vault? Like, what kind of gear are you using?
It's UA audio into Logic, basically, just right now. I had Pro Tools. I've got plenty of studios around the country and world. I can use it at my disposal. I just go do what I do. With Pantera, we wrote everything in the studio. I mean, down the riff tape, and then we start hashing it out from there. And that's where these ideas start with. So once I have an idea in my head of how I want, say, this next record to go, I already have 5 or 6 songs or more of my own personally, and I'm going to be writing with other writers, and it's not going to be the same. It's every record I want it to be a new shuffle. I want it to be a new birth. I mean, you have to just keep reinventing yourself, or you just get really stale.
Yeah.
Now, that doesn't mean I'm going to go play a poker record or I'm going to put out a jazz record. I'm saying, there's so much more that I'm just tapping into now and getting my feet wet with this voice and this new thing called the Rex Brown sound. I mean, it's really, at the same time, it's challenging. At the same time, it's just, as an artist, I feel free. Of course, with the total tragedy that happened in my life and you lost your best boy that was your guitar player in your heart. It took a while to get over it, and now I'm over it, and it's time to move on. People go, you should have done this 10 years ago. I'm like, I wasn't ready 10 years ago. It's what it is. I'm letting the wind blow.
Yeah, yeah. So what's been, speaking of kind of being excited in the new frontier with your album and 10 years after some people think you should have done it, what's been the best part of working on this new record and with the people that you're having an opportunity to work with, the band and the engineer, producer, and all those guys? What's it like?
This one, it just had a certain chemistry to it. The drummer just came in and just knocked it out of the park. There's so many guys that I would want to, before the day's done, meaning our final hours, there's so many people that I want to play with, and that's what I plan to do on this next and write songs with. I think if you limit yourself to just one thing, then you're stuck in it. So, like I said, getting your feet wet here with this one, I was just on a bus with my old cohort, Anselmo, and we were talking about my record, and it was kind of funny. I forgot where I was going with this, but we spent half of our lives together playing music, but he's doing his own thing and I'm doing mine, and it's a pretty cool feeling.
Well, how did the new band come together anyway?
Basically, I went down to NAMM, and it was in Nashville, and Nashville was just about the time coming of a lot of rock and rollers had moved out there. It opened the door. I had a photographer friend there, and also had my buddy had moved out there, my songwriting buddy that I'd done some other work with, we did some other stuff with. He had a studio down in his basement. I just stayed down there, and we started putting together these songs. And then we found this drummer, and I would just go down for like a week at a time and then come back in about a month, week at a time, come back in a month. So this was done over like a year period where we just finally put the whole record together. But at the same time, I just bought a home here in Albuquerque. We gutted the thing, and it's like, if you're a musician, sometimes you don't have that opportunity to just you're always on the road, which I don't miss, but I'm fixing to get a healthy dose of. It's just one of those things where you get a little burnt and you got to move on and do something else. And this is what happens. And I'm just always creative, but it was a well thought out. This was all in my head. That's why my name's on the record. It's not a band name. This is Rex Brown. I'm wearing a white hat on this.
I think you have a good personal brand, so it's really smart, in my humble opinion, that you did that.
I appreciate that. At the same time, you want to expand on that brand. You don't want to be just, the artists that just stay in that same rut because they can do it year after year. That's not who I am. That's just not who I want to be. Like I said, I've got so much more in me that I can't wait till we start working on number 2, but I know that I'm not going to tour this thing to death. I can tell you that straight up. The scene here in the States is pretty much where you go to these big festivals now, like we had with the Texas Jams and stuff like that. Now they have them all over the country, and especially in Europe. And we'll definitely be on some of those bills next year, even with this record, as I'm working on another one.
Speaking of festivals, if it's okay, I wanted to sort of jump back in time, because I don't know if you saw my messages after I read the book. I had mentioned that it was really a nice way to catch up on this big period of your life that I missed out on because we were living our lives and everything. I don't know if I had just forgotten or never really knew, but you and the boys in Pantera played in the USSR at the time of the fall of the Iron Curtain in 91, right? And
Right.
do you have any reflections on that? It must have been really interesting. I thought it would be fun to share, if you do, that anything that, is outside
Well,
the book.
We were right in the middle of making probably one of the greatest metal records ever made of our generation. And we got called upon by Time Warner to go open this big show from AC/DC Metallica in this airfield. And Time Warner's going to shoot all the footage. It was put together really, really quick. We got there about 3 or 4 days early. So we got to see Russia. When we got off the plane, we basically it just looked like a 60-watt light bulb. And in the town, this is like 11 o'clock in the morning. And there's people lined up around the corner. So we have 2 or 3 translators with us. And I'm asking a lot of questions. I mean, why are these people in line? They said, well, they're standing in line for bread. And that just kind of shook me. The Soviet Union with all this power, and it was all bleak. Literally, it was just, there was no neon signs. There were no hardly anything. They had one McDonald's and one Pizza Hut that were joined together. And basically back then, people, they would save their money for a whole month to just take their family to McDonald's. And then we got to Gorky Park and then go down to the black markets and all that kind of stuff. It was just such a culture, kind of a shock, and especially what was going on with the politics of the whole world at that time. We got to be a part of it. That was something just amazing. Then you get to play this show in front of 1 million people. You couldn't even count. You had different flags from all the different countries that they had promoted this thing in. It was maniacal. Just that many people, and we were still a bar band as far as I was concerned. We had never been on a big deck before, but we still put on our show. And they caught it on film, and it's a piece of history now. We're just nice. A lot of guys don't get to do that.
Yeah, it sounded like they loved you.
I'm blessed in a lot of ways.
Yeah. I'm going to switch gears again. I really wanted to ask you about your business acumen, if you will. I know over the years you and I've talked about, I might be not accurate in saying this, but I kind of have an impression from the past. It's just something that you found yourself that you having to do. In other words, you had to do it to sort of help Pantera and then your later career move along in the way you wanted it to. So I wanted to ask just a couple of questions about it. And I ask these because, as you may recall from when I reached out to you, this is a kind of a learning podcast for other musicians. So I think this stuff would be super useful to some people. What business skills have you learned that you feel like have been the most helpful to you as far as playing in music goes?
Number one, you have to write great songs. Now, it doesn't matter what genre you play. It has to have a hook to it. It has to have something that's going to catch listeners' attention. Also, you need a very good lawyer, and they're few and far between. This industry's changed about 3 or 4 times since I've been in it. Now it's to the Spotify thing, with this torrent, where anybody can just take your song. You could have 1 million plays off of it, make hardly any money. For musicians, it's about getting in that van and learning how to accept their strengths and weaknesses. And then saying that with business acumen, you have to surround yourself with people that have the same vision, the same drive, and the same passion for what you're doing, and you never give up. It took us 6 years to get out of the clubs. Once we signed with a major label, a lot of bands just go, we've made it. Nope, that's when the work gets going. Even with this deal that I just did, that's really when the work starts. And either you can just blow it off and go spend your advance, or you can work it. And that's what I do every day. I'm on the phone at 9 o'clock every morning. I don't stop till about 6 o'clock at night, but it's nonstop.
I'm going to come back to the business thing, but I have to ask you something because you brought up your morning. I had pictured you these days as being a night owl. Are you, or are you kind of a morning person these days?
Well, I quit drinking. It's been 4 years and about 13 days. So it changes everything. It changes perspective. It changes your outlook. It changes the way you deal with stuff. And also, if you're not on the road all the time, it changes your drive.
Yeah.
When you're on the road, you have a certain routine. You have a certain schedule you have to meet. That's when the night owl comes in, but rarely am I up till 4 o'clock these days in the morning. It just doesn't happen. Even when I'm on the road, I just try to get to bed early, play earlier shows, and just try to keep that normal routine. Because if not, I'm not the young chicken anymore. So you got to take care of yourself. And that's the most important thing. And coming from a band that's notorious for being one of the heaviest drinking bands on the planet, that's knocking your body in the dirt, it's taken its toll over the years. So I just get rid of the stuff that's killing you and move on down the line.
Well, I know you're a father, and I was going to say a husband, but I don't know your marital status now, and it's not important, but you're in a relationship.
Pieces of paper don't mean anything.
Isn't that true?
In my world. So it doesn't matter if you're married or whatever. I've got a loved one that I sleep to every night. That's all that matters.
Yeah. So I was just going to say, I bet you may be living what I would consider in terms of the hours you keep, at least these recent days, sort of a normal normal existence as opposed to the past years of touring. Okay, back to business really quick.
I've slowed down there, Rob. Not on stage, I haven't. I still feel like I'm 25 years old.
I have a theory. I know that we slow down a little bit as we get older, but I also think that we just become so much more self-aware that we pay attention when it's not right. And a lot of the things that we complain about noticing that we didn't used to have are just because we're paying attention. And when we're young, we just don't pay as much attention to that.
Here's what I would say also to somebody. I try to keep my expectation level at about 5. Okay? Anything that goes above 5 is great. You know you're doing something right. Keep doing that. Anything that drops below 5, you know that, you really need to pick it up big time to get back to just normal. Because that's, life has its hills and valleys. And just like life, so does a musician. If you're cruising about 5 and you hit 6 or 7 and you really hit it out of the park and hit a 9, you just keep doing what you're doing because apparently you're doing it right. And these days it's been a 8.5. And then some days it's a 6. So, it's just like anything in life. There's only 2 things in this life you can control, and that's your effort and your attitude. It's the only thing we can control. Look, the sun rises every morning. It depends on what you want to do with it. The only thing I can control today is my effort and my attitude, and that's it.
Speaking of that, what are you doing these days? I know you're healthier than ever. What do you do to stay that way and stay mentally clear, and besides the not drinking, when you go to record, to stay feeling good and then knowing that you're going to tour at least a little bit again, what kind of things do you do to stay healthy?
I do a lot of essential oils. I do a lot of chakras, binaural beats. I've got to lay down and take 20 minutes of your day and just go put some headphones on and some blinders. Even if you're not trying to sleep, but just rest your body for just 20 minutes and take your mind off of everything that's going on. And you'd be surprised. I do that every day about 5:36. And then it takes about 5 minutes of prep time and then about 5 minutes of getting up. But I've got to take that 20 minutes or 25 or 30, whatever it is, of your day to just reflect on where you are and kind of, even if you're sitting in a corner somewhere, close your eyes and just throw everything out the window. Because in the long run, it doesn't mean anything unless you have your mental. And I think that has a lot to do with physical too. I really do. I think the more that you try to push yourself and just push and push and push, sooner or later you're going to snap unless you do have these regimens, or regimens.
What's coming through the headphones when you're doing that?
It's delta waves, alpha waves, theta waves. It's called binaural beats, and there's a million of them on YouTube. I've got like a day 1 through 14 that I just go and listen to every day. And they all have a different, because you can't listen to the same thing every day. If you do, they're based off the Tibetan bowls. And so within those 7, there's 7 chimes inside of those Tibetan bowls. So it goes back to a little bit of Buddhist old kind of thinking. That's what I'm into.
Where does one find those?
Just look up binaural beats on YouTube. You look it up on Google. You can do any of that stuff. There's so many. It's really, I don't necessarily go to the gym. I do a lot of, my girl calls it Pilates, but I do a lot of push-ups, man. I do a lot of scrunches. I had an operation to have on my pancreas. I just have to live this healthy regimen or it doesn't fit me well. It doesn't suit me.
Well, I'm looking forward to checking that out because I have a daily routine of meditating, which it kind of sounds like what you're doing there. And I've never checked out the binaural beats, though, and I've done different sort of modalities of it.
It does everything for you. You don't have to think, it does everything for you. So that's where I started with meditation, where I've been doing this for 10 years. But I also use a lot of essential oils and vitamins and stuff like that are very key to cell repair and all that kind of stuff also. Dude, I moved out here in the mountains, man, and I've turned into a tree hugger, That's all there's to it. It's all bark of things. It's the bark of this tree, the flower of this. 2-year-old, good old Ganj that keeps singing.
Yeah. Well, I'm meeting, and I'm sure you are too, I'm meeting more and more people that are into much of the same, and it's just all in the name of trying to stay clear-headed and even-keeled and healthy and all that. So you're definitely not alone, and I'm sure you know that.
And a lot of medical marijuana.
Nice. Is that legal where you are? I shouldn't ask that, should I?
Of course it is. It's legal a lot of places.
I know. I want to jump to advice that other musicians might be able to use. You gave a little bit earlier on this one, but like in making a great record, you mentioned earlier, we started talking about business, but you said that you have to write great songs, you have to have great hooks. But what other type of advice would you give to somebody if they are dreaming of making a great record? What can you say to them?
Diversity. It's just about, if you're onto something, keep at it. If you run into a stump, jump off of it, but come back to the other idea because you're onto something to start with. Sometimes I'll be sitting there and the paper literally will have pen in hand and it just starts going. I just let it flow, and then from there I'll go back and look at it and go, okay, what does that mean? And for me, a lot of the times it's just getting the words right and how you want to say them, how they're going to come across and how they fit with a hook. Songwriting is an easy process. You can make it really hard on yourself, or you can make it depending on what kind of music you're going for.
What about on aligning yourself with great people? And by that, I mean just aligning yourself with the right musicians, the right business people, the right like-minded folks. I've seen younger musicians who appear to struggle with this kind of thing. What has been your best teaching tool when it comes to surrounding yourself with the right people?
Luck. It's just like, look, you only surround those people that you want to be with.
I agree with them a lot. What's the worst advice you've heard or followed in your life as a musician?
Playing it safe.
You never did that. And then you mentioned earlier the business has changed like three.
The one thing that's very important is that you take those chances, that you take those stuff that's thrown at you and give it a different twist. See if it works your way. Know your strengths and weaknesses. And this is probably why I'm most proud of it, is because I took a chance on it. Wearing the white hat, I could fall straight on my face. It's not how you fall down. It's how you get yourself up gracefully. And that's like anything in life. If you don't take a chance on it, you're never going to drink. You're never going to learn. You're never going to have that experience of, I did it the best I could, given the opportunity. And not a lot of us are given that. As I sit here and talk to you about all this kind of stuff, I also have to be very grateful to a lot of people that I've met over the years that I'm still friends with, that still mean the world to me, even though my life has been kind of crooked compared to the normal 9-to-5 kind of stuff. I like to treat people the way I'd like to be treated. I think that says a lot and where you want to go. Now, on a creative level, either you got it or you don't. You can beat yourself over to death forever, but it's putting the right pieces together. If I would have gotten that studio and this drummer wouldn't have worked, I would have got somebody else. If that producer wasn't who I wanted, I would have got somebody else. But if you know you're onto something and something's working, you feel that magic, you know when you're on it. You've been in a million bands. You played with several fellows that just don't have it, but they were the only guys you could get. Don't settle for second best ever.
Yeah.
You can't. There's somebody else out there that's just as good as them looking for the same gig. That's just the way I look at it. The band that I put together now, I put them in a room about a month and a half ago, and with their own pedigrees and everything else that they've done over a period of time, we're all about the same age, give or take 5 or 6 years. We all listen to the same kind of music, except for this little stand-in bass player. I'm playing guitar and singing now. So he's 25 and he doesn't get it, but he's a really great bass player. And so I like having the challenge of teaching someone else, okay, this is the way it goes, or just try it this way. Being that total dictator, nope, you just can't do it, you're fired. You got to put in those constructive criticism, is very important. That's the one thing in Pantera, where we would all just look at each other and go, yeah, that sucks, dude. No, that ain't going to fly. Or they'd hear it and they go, let's try it this way. That's two different ways to look at it. And that egos do not stand a chance in any band. Now, look, you need the swagger, you need the feel, you need all that kind of stuff. But you're an entertainer. And that's when you put your ego on. When you're off that deck, you better be the nicest sumbitch in the world.
So true.
That's it.
So true. We're talking about taking chances, and I wanted to mention, and I wish I had it handy, I think I have it bookmarked somewhere, but a quote that was something along the lines of, if you're truly creative and you take chances and it doesn't work, you'll have another chance and you'll probably hit pay dirt with it. If you feel that you are talented, I guess the takeaway is definitely take chances, because if it doesn't work, you're definitely going to have another shot at it. So.
And that's the same thing in life, man. You have to put life in general.
Oh, yeah.
Music is just, I mean, what was Beethoven thinking when he wrote all these masterpieces? You know, his work was only 15 years long. Those guys back in those days, they didn't live that long. They put all these masterpieces together really, really quick, and then they were gone. We just happen to live our lives a little bit longer than these fellows that wrote all these incredible pieces of work 100 to 200 years ago. Like I said, with the genre, I love all types of music. I'm always looking for something different to hear. I want to hear how somebody puts those 12 notes in differently. And it's learning how to cop the riff, you know, like Keith. It's Read Life by Keith. I'm reading it for the fourth time, and it's just amazing.
I love that book. I should read it again. You know what? Another one that I really liked, and I think you turned me on to it, it was the one that Bill Wyman did that was like that coffee table book that had all the nice photography in it.
Yeah.
That's also great, just from a historical perspective. But I did love Keith's book for sure.
Amazing. He's got like 3 or 4 of those out. His last one I just saw, he's got every instrument. That was the third one. I think the new one he has out is even bigger than the other one, which like he just kept all that stuff. That's one thing I wish I would have done. I've got the old pamphlets and all the booklets and all that kind of stuff. But and notes, dude, I've got pads. I got so many notepads of just think tanks that I keep. I've got, I don't know, probably 1,000 of them, you know, and then you go back to these books through the years and you kind of look over and you go, wow. Go back there. You were onto something there. Just didn't come to fruition at that point. Go back, make sure you make notes of everything that happens. I mean, I keep every email to, you know, I'll sit on a Saturday and just go back over old emails and go, well, I could have said that better, or oh, that was killer. It's just life, man. We just do the best we can in a given day. There's no Superman. I mean, you know, I just try to be the best I can for the day. You know, that's all I can.
So, Rex, somebody who is maybe recording their first or second album and hasn't had the long career that you've had, and they're in today's music scene, they really want to make a living in music. And I've read a lot and talked to a lot of guys about all these different ways, and I continue to talk to them about all these different ways to make a living in music. And it tends to revolve around diversity, and not just in the music that you make, but the way that you utilize your talents and maybe some of the different channels on which you spread your talents. But what do you think young people that are sort of getting started, maybe they've done a record or they're in the process, they want to make a living at it, but they haven't really started, what would you say to them?
Number one, it'd be against with their circumstance. That's a pretty broad question. I can only speak for myself. I don't like speaking for other people, but there's tons of great talent out there. They just don't know how to funnel it. I think that's what you're trying to get at. If you're happy and you know it, clap your hands. But Jesus Christ, man, there's so many solo artists that are out there. They can make their own records in their own house, just like I have. And there's a lot of records that go out like that. You know, with all the sounds and everything with technology that's come so far. There's all kinds of ways that music can be made these days. You just have to stay on pilot, get yourself playing. I think playing a lot of shows helps, but I think it's also getting with someone that believes in your music and that thinks that they can take it somewhere. And there's a lot of people in this business that are slippery, slimy vultures. And then there's people that get it and want to do something with it. And that's where you find these stars that just pop out of nowhere. Finding the right managers and stuff like that, and it's hard these days, but it's finding that little scene, that little niche where you get in with somebody, if somebody sells, all it takes is for you sell one song to somebody else that covers it. And then you're pretty much set. These American Idols and the Voices and all that kind of stuff. There's amazing talent. I love watching those. Where do those guys go after that? They probably have never been on a stage before. They get signed by these huge management companies, and it's ruined the business. You know what I'm saying? For me, because we're being force-fed. I just don't believe in this force-fed music and this Spotify and this whatever is out there. I think it's good everybody put their own playlists together. I think it's great, but pay for the music. I work my ass off every day to do what I do, but I'm not going to do it for free. Pay the man. If I'm working 16 hours a day, well, how much am I worth?
Yeah, I get it.
Get paid for. Don't throw it out there for anybody just to have, unless you get your foot in the door somewhere. And then from there, you got to get some good people. Surround yourself with a producer. Finding a producer is probably the easiest way to get yourself into the business. These guys will help you with your songs, with your records starting out. It might cost you a little bit of money, but that's how to do it. I think in these times, it really does. A producer can take a song and do whatever he wants with it. And then finding one that's going to listen to you and try to see your vision all the way through, those are the ones that are irreplaceable.
I keep running across stories of musicians that are, I guess they're sort of diversifying their channels of income in the music space by doing a myriad of different things beyond the recordings. And
even though we've sold 40, 45 million records, and we still sell what we sold 20 years ago. It's phenomenal that we did. And look, we never got any radio play. We never got MTV. We hardly got anything. But what we did was we toured our asses off. But then we needed a break. And you have to take those breaks to kind of reassess your life and where you want to go, say, 4 or 5 years down the road. If you're just on the road constantly, you don't have that chance to explore. Being a successful musician, which I have been, but I still approach it as I do anything. This feels like starting over again for me. You have to approach it that way. And you just have to go, second best doesn't work for me. If I see a vision, I'm going to follow it all the way through.
Clearly. I wanted to ask you where people can find you online if they want to follow you on social. I have some of them in front of me, but if there are things outside of Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook that you want to share.
Chaos on Twitter. I've got a couple of Facebook pages. Instagram, Rex Brown Official. Pretty much all these are Rex Brown Officials. They're run by a big company and everything else. So, and then we have a new website. It's rexbrown.net. And you can find all you need to know about moi on there. There will also be a Rex Brown band, is what we're calling it for now. I think it might be some Rex Brown car Rex. I don't know we hadn't decided yet. Thanks for having.
Yeah, I'm glad we reconnected. Thank you so much for spending your afternoon chatting with me, and I hope that we stay in touch. I know you got some video stuff.
Anything I can do, Rob. You can always reach out to me on Messenger or whatever with one of the smaller pages. Now, look, if I want to Messenger, I've got a page that's about 400,000 people, and I can't get back to their stuff every day. But, the right channels, you know where to find me. And I like hearing different people's stuff, and sometimes I'll critique, and other times of the day I don't have time. So I try to get to it on the weekends or whenever I can.
Well, dude, much love, much success. I can't wait till you do it again and again. And I know this one's going to be great for you. I look forward to seeing your band. I hope you'll let me know where you guys are playing. I'm going to try and get out and see you from my neck of the woods. Hopefully I'll just...
We'll play Panama, just for the fun of it.
Yeah, that would be awesome.
Hey, Rob, why don't you just get a promoter down there? Well, I've never been to Panama. We'll just go down and play a show. How's that?
I'll see what I can work out.
You know the scene down there. Hell.
Of course. I do. I'll work it out.
3/4 up in air flights, and we'll be there.
We'll talk. Thanks, buddy. I really appreciate it.
Hey, this is Robonzo. Thanks so much for listening. If you enjoyed this podcast, please subscribe on iTunes, Stitcher, or Google Play Music. If you liked this podcast, please leave a review. This episode was sponsored by the Unstarving Musician's Guide to Getting Paid Gigs, How to Get Booked and Paid What You're Worth Over and Over Again, available on Amazon and in audio format as the Unstarving Musician's Guide podcast. You can also learn more about the book and companion podcast at unstarvingmusician.com/book. Are you a gigging musician, recording artist, songwriter, or touring professional, perhaps struggling to get your music out to the world? Struggling to get the gigs you want? Pop over to unstarvingmusician.com and sign up for my email list. I'll send you occasional emails about upcoming episodes, expert tips and advice, music, musician resources, and anything else I come across that might make your journey better and brighter. The Unstarving Musicians podcast is edited by Juan Perez. Are you a podcaster? Would you like 20% off on editing of your first 4 episodes? Visit the show notes for this episode for a link to Juan's freelance profile or unstarvingmusician.com/resources and mention you heard about this offer through the Unstarving Musicians podcast. With much gratitude, peace, love, and more cowbell.